tonight on the ReidOut.
He liked cool things. He saw things so he wanted to take them, and he was pretty much able to take them, and not just on classified information matters, on all kinds of things that crossed his desk. Some days he liked to eat a lot of French fries. Some days he took classified documents. He wanted them. Why did he want them? Because he could get them.
From classified documents to French fries, Donald takes what Donald wants. And as you heard, that's according to John Bolton. And new reporting tonight on the lead up to the FBI search at Mar-a-Lago, who the FBI interviewed about it, and how Attorney General Garland finally gave the go-ahead. Plus, the fake elector investigations are heating up, with Rudy Giuliani set to testify in Georgia tomorrow. Also tonight, voters are going to the polls in 2 states, with Liz Cheney's political career on the line in Wyoming and Lisa Murkowski facing a challenge for her Senate seat in Alaska. And get this, Sarah Palin is trying to become relevant again. Get that sketch ready, SNL. Good evening, I'm Tiffany Cross, in tonight for Joy Reid, and we begin with the ReidOut with a familiar place, maybe even a happy place, because Donald Trump is once again at the center of controversy, this time over classified top secret documents that led to the Mar-a-Lago raid. Now, the judge who approved the search warrant will hear arguments Thursday over whether to unseal the search warrant affidavit. The DOJ has asked the judge to keep it sealed, while Trump wants it released. Meanwhile, Republicans and pro-Trump extremists continue to slam the FBI and the Justice Department over their search. And now there's another talking point floating in the ether saying that what Trump actually did was no big deal.
I think Mar-a-Lago is a pretty safe place. It has Secret Service protection. Sounds like these documents might have been in a safe. So no, I'm not overly concerned about some top secret information getting leaked out.
For the sake of argument, we're going to stipulate that Trump did have possession of documents that were classified for some good reason. Documents that, for example, we legitimately would not want the Chinese government to see. If that is true, would it justify what happened? Would it justify sending a large team of federal agents to shut down the entire southern tip of Palm Beach to raid Mar-a-Lago on a weekday? No, it wouldn't.
Okay. First, keep in mind the first guy you heard from, Ron Johnson, thinks Listerine cures COVID, so you definitely shouldn't be listening to him. And the second guy you heard from, Tuckums, well, the problem is too many people listen to him. Can you imagine what any of them would say if President Barack Obama had squirreled away classified material, mishandled them, ripped them up, take them back together? It'd be the scandal of the century. But this is a scandal so big that the New York Times reported today that Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin, the White House counsel, and his deputy under Donald Trump were interviewed by the FBI in connection with the documents. You see, the FBI had questions, such as how exactly did 15 boxes of material, some of it marked as classified, make its way from the People's White House to Trump's Palace Resort? Sources even told the New York Times that while Philbin tried to help the National Archives retrieve the material, Trump told advisors, "It's not theirs, it's mine." Spoken like a toddler or a dictator. Joining me now is Peter Strzok. He's the former FBI counterintelligence agent, and Maya Wiley, president of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Maya, I want to kick things off with you because the Pats, I'll call them, Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin, are the most senior people who work for Trump, who are known to have been interviewed by the FBI investigation into the former president's handling of classified material. Now, they were Trump's representatives to deal with the National Archives. And when Trump said those documents are mine, how impactful do you think their interview was when it came to the search warrant? And what exactly do you think the FBI might have learned from them?
Well, I would call that evidence of intent to violate the law. And remember, it's a crime. So, what the FBI walked away with was evidence that Trump intended to commit a crime. Now, obviously, what that tells us is what we already knew, which is, you don't go get a search warrant from an independent judge asking to search the home of a former president lightly. You do it because you have very strong evidence. And to say in a warrant that was issued to cover not only documents that had that marked classified, right? And to have uncovered documents that were top secret, the highest level of information to protect the national defense, demonstrates that they actually had what we thought they had, which was significant probable cause. And I'll just add one other thing here, because we got to go back to the fact that in that warrant, there was actually a line that was critically important that also talked about evidence, information that might lead to understanding destruction, concealment, or transmission. That means sharing. Yeah. Something that could make us more vulnerable as a country. So someone should ask Ron Johnson, the pardon seeker, whether or not that gives him pause.
Yeah, and Ron Johnson serves on the House Foreign Relations or the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, also the Homeland Security Committee. So someone should ask him, do you take classified documents off Capitol Hill, which would be an interesting question. I'd be curious to hear his response. Peter, very pleased to have you on the show. I believe this is our first time sharing the screen together. So thanks for being here. I want to ask you, because Maya just talked about, the transmission and Trump sharing. Well, we know he shares because this guy almost tweeted out major secrets. I want to direct your attention to this Iran missile tweet. This is according to our own reporting here at NBC News. An Oval Office incident from 2019 perfectly illustrates Trump's approach to state secrets. That's according to an ex-official. Essentially, there was an image of the Iranian missile blowup, and it was exquisite intelligence. This is all according to a former official. And when they showed this to the president, he said, I'm tweeting it. And they essentially said, sir, we don't want to do that because people will understand our capabilities. His response was, I'm the president. I can declassify anything. That blows my mind. And I do wonder what exactly was Merrick Garland mulling over, because we have seen how dangerous this man was to our national security for 4 years. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the scary reality is the president has absolute authority to both classify and declassify things while he's in office. And what's critical there is that he clearly is no longer in office. He was not in office immediately following the inauguration on January 20th. So what you have to do is go back and look. And the biggest question in my mind is, why did he have all this information? In your run-up, you showed former National Security Advisor John Bolton saying he thought it might be neat. In my mind, I would not be surprised. One, not just the material that the FBI recovered in the search warrant, but those 15 boxes that the National Archives got much earlier in the year, I think there is going to turn out to be, one, highly, highly classified information. But two, things that aren't just things he found neat. I would be surprised if there weren't things that furthered his business interests, things that he could use as leverage over people, things that he could use to settle scores. It is just the biggest question in my mind is, why on earth, having been told repeatedly by so many people that he steadfastly refused to turn these things over and instead carried them all away. And I hope DOJ is content now with the FBI that they've recovered everything, but we're talking about a massive amount of information.
A massive amount indeed. And Maya, I want to point out that Ron Johnson is in a very tight race in Wisconsin against Mandela Barnes there. And so what's baffling to me about this entire thing is that 75 million people voted for this man. Present day, millions of people across this country remain blindly loyal to this man whose first job in government was president of the United States, as what he's failed miserably, I would say. So I wonder, when we have the reporting from the Wall Street Journal that Garland was mulling this over, I just wonder, from your brilliant expertise as an attorney, how much of that should Garland have looked through the legal lens? And should he have even considered the political fallout or the political consequence? And I don't mean elections. I mean the violence that we're seeing play out since this all happened.
Well, I think the truth is that Merrick Garland is doing what he said he was going to do, which he's following the evidence methodically and making sure he's making a decision about the evidence. So I don't think there's any question that he's been doing that. I think the issue of the violence is one that we have to lay at the feet of Donald Trump himself. He has been stoking violence since he was campaigning in 2015. He, as we know, now had foot soldiers as part of January 6th who were extremists, white supremacists. And what we've seen in Truth Social, the misnamed media platform that Trump has founded, is that has become a primary source for organizing the doxing of a judge and also the publishing of information, private information about law enforcement agents and their spouses and children that has resulted already in a violent attack on an FBI office in Ohio. And, you know, when we total all that up, there's only one person, one group of people to lay that at the feet of. And that's people who have said that their allegiance to Donald Trump and their willingness to believe lies has taken precedent over their willingness to protect our democracy, our safety, our peace, and our national defense.